Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining today's Microsoft Marketplace Customer Office Hour focused on accelerating AI development with Microsoft Marketplace. Super excited to have you joining us today. If you are attending live, we will be having a live Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. If you're watching this on demand, definitely encourage you to engage with the session and post your questions afterwards in the Marketplace community. And so we will get started in just a minute here, but before we get started, just wanted to remind you that this office hour is not just a one-off event. This is actually part of a bigger series. We have a whole library of customer office hours available for you to watch on demand whenever it's convenient for you. The link to that customer office hour series is on the screen right here. It's aka.ms/marketplace customer office hours. So definitely encourage you to check out our library and look at all the other office hours that we have, as well as get a preview for what we have coming up in the future. So with that being said, I will go ahead and hand it off to today's presenter, my teammate Felipe Ospina. And Felipe will be talking through accelerating AI development with Marketplace. Thanks, Felipe. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Justin. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Felipe Ospina. I'm a product marketing manager for Microsoft Marketplace. And during this session, I want to show you how Microsoft Marketplace helps software companies go from building AI applications and agents to scaling that reach and monetizing those solutions, all without having to build your own commerce infrastructure, your own distribution channels, or without having to navigate lengthy procurement processes. This is what we will be covering today. First, we'll look at the hidden friction that slows AI innovation and delays time to market. Next, we will explore how Microsoft Marketplace helps developers build faster by simplifying access to AI models, to tools, and to cloud infrastructure. And finally, we will see how Marketplace helps you scale your reach and will help you monetize your applications through the Microsoft ecosystem of customers, partners, and purchasing channels. So let's get started. Before I show you what Marketplace does, let me start by describing what your life probably looks like right now. You're constantly context switching. Your AI stack may be spread across GitHub, it may be spread across Azure, perhaps a model provider, maybe a separate observability tool, maybe a database from another vendor. And every time you need to do something, you're really jumping between 3 different consoles and 2 different billing dashboards. And then you have contracts. You may have 3, 4, 5 separate vendor agreements, perhaps each with their own procurement cycles, their own legal review processes, their own renewal dates. And likely the worst one, you're stuck weeks in procurement. You may be spending 8 weeks or more. You've picked the right model, you know how it works, and now you're waiting 2 months for your purchase order to go through before you can actually ship something. So does that sound familiar? That is the friction that developers are paying today just to assemble this AI stack. And it has nothing to do with writing code. But here's the alternative. GitHub for your code, Azure for your infrastructure, and Marketplace, a single platform for everything in between. Your models, your developer tools, your billing, and your distribution, all of it. No separate contracts, no procurement bottleneck, and no context switching between multiple dashboards. So let me show you what it actually looks like. You can think of Microsoft Marketplace as a platform where, as a developer, you can find, you can provision, and you can also sell those cloud and AI solutions. It's all happening with the Microsoft ecosystem that you're already building in. You can think of it as a connective tissue between your code, your infrastructure, your models, and ultimately your customers. So Marketplace is not a separate destination that you just go to. It's actually embedded in the tools that you already use every day. So let's make that a little bit more concrete. When you start using Marketplace, that context switching that you're currently doing, gone. Everything is integrating across the Microsoft stack. whether it's GitHub, Azure, Microsoft Foundry, and Marketplace, through one flow, no hopping between consoles and systems. Those three vendor contracts and all of that fragmented billing that you were managing prior to using Marketplace, they're gone. Because every solution that you are provisioning through the Marketplace will bill directly to your Azure invoice. One line item, one renewal process, and a single procurement cycle. And finally, those 8 weeks that you're stuck with within procurement, they're dramatically reduced and the process is accelerated. Because your enterprise customers already have that Azure consumption commitment, and they are not opening new vendor relationships with you. They're spending that budget they already have allocated. And that's something there for you to unlock. Those same three problems, and Marketplace solves all three. So that's the problem and the solution in one table. Now, let me walk you through it actually works, because Marketplace isn't just a store. It's really three things in one. It's a place where you can build, you can source your stack through Marketplace. You can think of it as a destination to acquire the models, the developer tools, the databases, and those observability capabilities of observability tools, all of it, the entire AI stack that you need, provisioned directly into your Azure environment. Number two, Marketplace is where you scale. When your product is ready, Marketplace is that distribution layer. It's one catalog surfaced across Azure, Microsoft 365, Microsoft Foundry, and a network of channel partners where you publish once and you reach everywhere. And finally, you're monetizing through Marketplace because you're packaging your solution as a Marketplace offer, and then you're selling it through the same platform that your enterprise customers are already buying from. Their Azure commitment is paying for your product. Build, scale, and monetize. So let's dive a little bit more deeply into these three concepts. When you're thinking about building, this is the Marketplace catalog. It's a catalog across every category that you need to ship an AI product. Databases, developer tools, observability, analytics, and most importantly, the models. We have over 11,000 open source models, including open source models, ready to provision directly into your Azure environment. And you may recognize names like NVIDIA, Grafana, Snowflake, Elastic, plus niche models that are also trained on vertical data sets. For example, if you are in the legal space or healthcare or financial services, those models will help you differentiate your product in ways, for example, that GPT-4o won't necessarily do for you. The other thing that is worth calling out here is that these aren't just links to third-party websites. When you're provisioning something directly from Marketplace, it will deploy into your Azure environment, and then you can integrate it with your GitHub workflow and be billed directly to your Azure invoice. And it's that same procurement motion every time, rinse and repeat. And if speed is your moat, and right now with AI, it absolutely should be, this catalog is how you build faster without having to start from scratch. Now, let's look at the models more specifically, because this is the decision that will make or break your AI solution. For example, if you end up picking a model that is too powerful for the use case you're trying to deliver, your cost per inference will kill your margins before you actually reach even 100 customers. But if you end up picking something too generic and your product never will break away from the pack. Microsoft Foundry gives you a leaderboard to navigate this. You can benchmark models side by side and map against cost. So this way, you're not just guessing, you're comparing with data. And that workflow is very simple across 3 steps. First, you're comparing, you're running that use case against multiple models that are available in Marketplace, so you can see the quality versus the cost. Second, you're provisioning, you're deploying that winner directly into your Azure environment through Marketplace, without a separate contract. And then you can iterate. You can swap models, or you can create vertical variants without re-architecting your entire solution with the same SDK. So this is a tool to help you differentiate, and you can find it through this QR code. Now, I've been telling you that Marketplace is built for developers. So let me show you a concrete example of what this means. This is essentially everything you need. For example, to put Claude Sonnet 4.5, that Anthropic model that you just reviewed using the Foundry model leaderboard, sourced directly from Marketplace. You want to source that from Marketplace and embed it into your product. So on the top of the screen, that's the bicep block, 6 lines of code. It will provision Claude as a deployment in your Azure Foundry account. No portal clicks, there's no procurement ticket. You don't have to have a separate contract with Anthropic because your customer is buying it through their existing Azure commitment. Down below, you can see the runtime call. These are the 4 lines in Python. And you can notice the client, Azure AI Inference. The same 4 lines work whether you've provisioned Claude, Mistral, Llama, or any other model in Marketplace. You can then swap the model name, and really nothing else changes. So as you can see, this is the developer promise of Marketplace. Procure any model from any provider, provisioned as code, called with one SDK, then build through Azure. Less context switching, accelerated procurement, and faster shipping. So let's make this a little bit more concrete. You can see on the left side of the screen, that is what it looks like today when you're building with multiple model providers. And that's what you're actually looking at in your experience if you're doing this outside of Marketplace. For every provider, you're having to manage a separate contract, a separate billing relationship, and perhaps a separate SDK or a separate API. Even though you've already chosen the right model, you still have to deal with procurement delays, that fragmented billing, and reworking your integration every time you have to switch providers. Now look at the right side of the screen. This is how working with Microsoft Marketplace looks like. All of that gets unified. So you can see at the top, Marketplace handles the provider relationship for you through one contract and one billing relationship. It's all tied to your existing Azure subscription. You don't have to have separate agreements, no new procurement cycles, nothing of that sort. From there, everything will flow into Azure, where those models are actually deployed directly into your Azure environment. And from a developer perspective, this is really the key. Instead of learning a new SDK for every provider, you can use a consistent SDK and API pattern through the Azure AI Inference layer. So when you're working with models from Anthropic, Mistral, or Meta, for example, the way that you're integrating and calling them remains the same. You're not having to rewrite your application, and you're just swapping the model. So that's the shift with Microsoft Marketplace. Now that your stack is unified, you have one contract and one SDK pattern, there's also a barrier that is shifting, because it's no longer about how you can integrate the model. We saw how that part is solved. Now, the real question that you need to think about is, what are you going to build it with? How are you going to turn that into revenue? And in talking to developers and founders across the ecosystem, we consistently see 2 paths. First, you have an existing product, but you're embedding AI into that product. In this scenario, you're not actually starting over. You're adding intelligence to something that already has customers, it already has auth, it has billing, and it has a UX. In that scenario, that means lower cost, perhaps faster time to revenue, and you're selling to people who already trust your product and trust you. On the second scenario, on the one on the right, you're going greenfield. You're building perhaps a net new agent, you're doing the full agentic loop, you're provisioning new infrastructure, and you're acquiring new customers. That's really exciting, and there may be real upside, but there could have higher upfront costs, perhaps slower time to revenue, and more competition. Now, both of these paths are valid. And the question is not really which path is better, it's which one aligns to your time to market and your product differentiation better. But here's the key point. You don't have to start from scratch to monetize AI. If you already have a product with users, that install base is there for your advantage. So you can use it. And either way, the next step when you're thinking about your scenario and thinking about marketplace is deciding how to package that solution that you're building for success through marketplace. So let's take a look a little bit more deeply at this. You've already decided what you're building. Now you need to decide how you package it for marketplace. And this decision is more important than most developers realize because it doesn't just affect your architecture. It will affect your pricing, it may affect your support model, and it will surely affect your go-to-market. So you can think about 3 offer types at a high level. And let me give you this one-line decision guide for each of these offer types. We can start on the left side with SaaS, software as a service. You may want to choose this if you're running the application within your tenant and perhaps you're billing per seat or you're billing for actual consumption and usage. And typically, this is the most commonly used default offer type for most AI products. It provides you with the fastest onboarding. It provides you with Azure benefit eligibility, so your customers can decrement their Azure cloud consumption commitment when they purchase your product. And it helps you scale without redeploying everything per customer. Next is the container model. So you may want to choose this if your customer is perhaps in a regulated industry and their data cannot leave that environment they're in. So you can think about this as a customer in financial services, perhaps healthcare, or the government. The container is the best solution. In that scenario, their IT team is managing that AKS cluster, and you're just simply shipping the image to your customer. Then you have a managed application. You may choose this if your customers want the solution deployed in their own Azure subscription, but you operate it on their behalf. You're controlling the updates, and they are controlling the data residency. And finally, you have agents and connectors for Microsoft Copilot. This one is worth paying attention to right now. If you're building an agent that is surfacing inside Copilot or Microsoft Teams, this is your path. You can then link that agent back to your SaaS solution for transactability, so you get the commerce layer without having to rebuild it. You can think about a rule of thumb to help you guide this decision. Perhaps if you're targeting SMBs or enterprise customers, you can start with SaaS. If you're targeting regulated industries or regulated enterprises, perhaps the container or managed application is a better option. If you're building for the Microsoft Copilot ecosystem, that 4th column for apps and agents for Microsoft 365 and Copilot is your quicker lane. So I want to show you this slide because this is what I think surprises developers the most. Now that you've chosen your model, you've decided on the architecture and the offer type, this is how you will think about marketplace when you publish your solution. Because you're not listing your product simply on a website and hoping somebody finds it. Through the marketplace, you're plugging directly into a distribution network that is already embedded inside the products that your customers are using every day. For example, the Azure portal. When you publish your solution, you can surface your product to developers and architects that are actively provisioning infrastructure within Microsoft Azure or Microsoft 365. Your product, your agent, will be visible to the business buyers inside Teams, Outlook, and Microsoft Copilot. Or Microsoft Foundry, it'll be discoverable to developers building AI products right at the moment they're assembling their stack. And on top of that, you can think of a network of channel partners, whether they are system integrators, resellers, managed service providers, who are actively looking for those AI solutions to bring to their customers through their own marketplaces. So in essence, you're publishing once, and that's it. You don't have to build a partner program. You don't have to hire a channel team. You don't negotiate reseller agreements from scratch. You're essentially inheriting everything from Microsoft. And every purchase, whether it comes through Azure, through a partner, will land on your customer's Azure billing and any Azure commitments if your solution is Azure benefit eligible. So you don't have to stand up new vendor relationships, no new procurement cycles. That budget is there for you to use from customers who have those cloud consumption commitments. And this is what we mean by scaling. You're essentially writing the code, and Microsoft is handling that shelf space, that billing, and that distribution. I'm also very excited to announce that we have launched Intelligent Discovery, which is now a feature that we have in preview. Because as we've seen, Microsoft Marketplace is more than just a storefront. It's essentially a platform that helps you connect your AI products to customers at global scale. And it helps developers building on the Microsoft Cloud to create that production-ready AI products faster. And Marketplace is extending that foundation, helping you take what you've built and bringing it to customers. We're rethinking how customers find and evaluate software. And instead of having to navigate categories or guessing keywords, we've introduced Intelligent Discovery, where customers can describe the needs and the solutions they're looking for in natural language, and then Marketplace will match their intent to the right solution. And behind the scenes, Intelligent Discovery is powered by AI through a more contextual experience. It's guided search, it's surfacing relevant products, it's enabling comparisons so your customers can compare, and helping customers move from exploration to decision much faster. And for developers and software companies, essentially this means that your product doesn't just sit in a catalog, it's actively being surfaced to the right customers at the right time based on real intent. And this new release is helping customer intent turn into growth. So let's bring it all together. You started today with a fragmented stack. You started with 3 vendor contracts and 8 weeks in procurement. And this is where you now end up when you start using Microsoft Marketplace. Step 1, you're building on the Microsoft stack. You're sourcing your models and developer tools from the Marketplace catalog. You're provisioning them in Azure, and you're integrating them with your GitHub workflows. Your entire build pipeline in one place. Next, step number 2, you're publishing that solution to Marketplace. You're picking your offer type. For example, SaaS, if you're going broad, or container or managed applications, if you're going to the enterprise space in more regulated industries. Copilot solutions connectors, if you're going deep into the Microsoft ecosystem. You have one publishing motion with one certification process and one storefront. And then there's step 3, when you're able to reach new markets. Surfacing your product within Azure, Microsoft 365, Foundry, and those Microsoft channel partners. It's that distribution layer you didn't have to build, and customers you didn't have to go find, because in those customers, that budget was already allocated. That's the full loop, from your first line of code to a paid published offer on the same platform with the same billing without having to start over. You're building, you're scaling, and you're monetizing. Now, I would like to open it up for some questions that we can have from the audience.
Great. Thank you, Felipe. Everybody watching live today, again, feel free to submit your questions. We have some time for you to chat with Felipe and get all of your live questions answered. So I think we have a few in the chat already. First question, as a developer, how should I think about enterprise security, compliance, and data privacy concerns when building for Marketplace?
Yes, that is an excellent question. And it's one of the most pressing questions we hear perhaps from customers and from our developer audience. And the reality is that security and compliance, it's not something that you can add after the product is built. This is something that needs to be part of your architecture from day one. So as you're building your AI application or agent, Microsoft recommends a secure by design approach that will include, for instance, things like tenant isolation, Microsoft Entra ID authentication, things like least privilege access controls, perhaps encryption, secure API integrations, secrets management, and most importantly, the responsible AI practices. And those are, I would say, foundational capabilities that will help ensure your customer data is actually protected and that your solution can operate safely at enterprise scale. Now, Marketplace also supports the deployment and commercial models that align with different enterprise requirements. As we saw earlier when I was talking about the offer types, whether that's a SaaS application, a container solution that's running in the customer subscription or in the customer's environment, or a managed application that is deployed in the customer's Azure subscription. Because I would say that customers aren't just evaluating the AI or the intelligence of your solution, they're actually evaluating whether they should trust it. So thinking about that architecture and bringing in those governance, those security, and those compliance from the start is the best bet. The earlier you can build those capabilities into your solution, the easier it is for that customer to earn your trust, to accelerate perhaps the adoption of that product, and to move from proof of concept to production.
Great. Thanks, Felipe. Next question. I work in a startup building an AI agent. Do I need to decide my Marketplace offer type before I start building?
Absolutely. As I walk you through the framework, one of the most important decisions you can make early in the process is choosing the right offer type, because that decision is going to influence how customers deploy. It will influence how customers will buy and how they will use your solution. So for example, if you're hosting the service yourself, as we just talked about, SaaS is typically the right starting point. But if the customer needs the solution deployed in their own Azure environment, perhaps that container or the Azure application may be a better fit. So making this decision early in the process will help you avoid rework later. And then it will also help you ensure that your architecture and most importantly, your billing model, followed by your go-to-market strategy, are aligned from the beginning.
Thank you. Next question. How does Marketplace surface new AI offers or new solution providers versus existing ones? How are solutions prioritized when customers are searching?
Yes, so I just talked about intelligent discovery. This is a new experience that is currently in preview and will be made available to customers worldwide. It is using AI to essentially surface the right solution to the customer using natural language search. It will allow customers to compare. I would say that the key for this scenario is to ensure that your product description, whether it's a new solution to the marketplace or whether it is an existing solution, is as thorough as possible. Describing your use cases, describing to your audience what your product does, so that intelligent discovery can actually surface and be able to showcase the solution, whether it's new, whether it's been in the marketplace, We're now moving to a world where customers are searching based on natural language, and this type of functionality will help ensure that new solutions that are published to the marketplace will be surfaced to those customers. And the best description that you can add to your solution in the product details, outlining your use cases, what your solution does, the value it brings to the customers, will have greater success in being surfaced in search.
Okay. Next question. How do we plan for intelligent discovery on the back end? Are we still adding keywords and partner center? How is ID searching?
Yeah, so intelligent discovery will be based on an AI model. So it will be leveraging the product detail page, the details that you're providing on the detail page. Now, what is ultimately as important as that product detail experience are the categories and the industries that you are selecting. So you have the option to select up to 2 categories with 2 subcategories, as well as industries and verticals if your product is applied to an industry or vertical. So ensuring that you are accurately selecting the ones that are most relevant to your solution will help intelligent discovery surface them better compared to selecting a product or a category or industry that is not applicable. So that will help you in the intelligent discovery experience for customers. Those 2 things: product detail, page description, categories, and industries.
Okay. What is the biggest mistake developers make when publishing an AI app to marketplace?
I would say that many teams or developers, they may focus entirely on building that AI experience, but then waiting until the very end to think about how to go to market and how to commercialize it, right? So in reality, publishing readiness needs to start much earlier. You should be thinking about onboarding your customer. How will billing work? For example, the support model, the subscription lifecycle management, the security, and the way that customers are adopting your product while you're building the product, not after it's finished. What we see is that the most successful companies treat that monetization and that distribution that we talked about earlier as part of the product architecture, not as a post-launch activity, I would say.
Okay. Next question. How can I avoid vendor lock-in when selecting AI services?
Well, through the marketplace, you have the capability of engaging with a vendor and getting a private offer, right? And you have the option to do trials. So a great way to avoid that vendor locking is to find solutions that offer a trial, which you can test a proof of concept and make the decision. You also have the flexibility through private offers to negotiate specific commercial terms. If you want to ensure that you are able to renew after, say, 1 year of usage, you can do that through a private offer. It gives you the commercial flexibility to do that. One thing that we see customers is for solutions that they've purchased outside of the marketplace and they're up for renewal, you can think about bringing those solutions and that consumption through marketplace and use that as an opportunity to perhaps avoid that lockup and renew those solutions and re-engage with the partners if you see that's something that's valuable. So there's many ways that you can do that, or working with a services partner if you want to engage with different vendors to avoid lockup. It gives you the entire catalog for you to evaluate and test solutions through different ways.
Okay. Next question. How difficult is it to get an AI app or agent certified for Microsoft Marketplace? What are the most common reasons offers fail certification?
That's a great question, because there is a certification process that your solution has to go through to be published, and that's a question that we hear often. The certification process isn't designed to be a barrier. It's designed to ensure customers can trust what they're buying and the certification is looking for more than just if the application works. They're evaluating the customer experience, they're evaluating the security, privacy, support information, documentation that you're providing. So think about it as an evaluation of the completeness of your marketplace listings. Some of the most common issues that we see are surprisingly simple. For instance, around broken privacy or support links, incomplete listing information. We've seen, for instance, placeholder content that was missed, missing screenshots or documentation that can help customers, or even sometimes accessibility gaps in the application can be a problem. We also review the offer for policy compliance, and we have a whole set of policy guidelines that we are reviewing against. So those are accessible to people to understand, to make sure that those certification processes are addressed from the beginning and not as a final step before you're launching your solution, whether it's security, privacy, or any of the certification policies that we have. It's better to understand them from the beginning, and they're available on the marketplace website, so you can understand what you need to build against and make sure the certification goes smoothly.
Okay. Next question. Can I use Azure commit funds to purchase AI models and tools?
So there are models that are Azure benefit eligible in the marketplace. Essentially, you will see that designation of Azure benefit eligibility on the marketplace, whether it's on the web store or in the Azure portal, through a badge and a filter. So there are models that are in the marketplace that when you purchase, you can use them against your Azure consumption commitment. So make sure that you're able to see the badge and filter them with the Azure benefit eligibility option to make sure that you are purchasing the model that accrues to that commitment.
Okay. And the last question, what AI solutions are customers adopting most often today?
Yeah, so when we look at the performance across all of the categories, we're seeing incredible adoption across security, collaboration, databases are categories where we're seeing just explosive growth, and Copilot agents. We have Copilot agents, Microsoft Copilot agents available in the marketplace. We see incredible growth. It's been one of the highest growth categories in terms of the products and the solutions that have been onboarded to the catalog. It's been incredibly rampant over the last year. So that I would say the integration with those Copilot agents with products like Microsoft Teams and some of the solutions around Copilot are just one of the hottest categories right now where we're seeing adoption.
Okay, lots of great questions. Thank you, everybody that contributed. That is a wrap for today's Q&A session. Thank you, Felipe, for that great presentation today. We will go ahead and end there. Again, if you are watching this on demand, this is not the end of the conversation. You can still post questions in our marketplace community. And again, encourage you all to visit the marketplace community at aka.ms/community/marketplace. You can ask questions, engage with our team and Microsoft partners, and get other resources like these office hours through the community resource. So appreciate you all joining us today. Thanks, Felipe, again, and have a great day. Thanks all.
Thank you.